Well, a warm welcome to this talk. Now, are we missing out on cures for cancer is an interesting question. And today we're going to be looking at this paper here, Membendazol as an anti-cancer agent, a case series of self-administration in 3 patients. And we'll be addressing the small number of patients later on in this video. And as always, I've got all of the notes here and the links that we're going to be using. So the thing is, Membendazol, it's actually a veterinary preparation in the UK. As far as I know, it's not licensed for humans, but it's very similar to Membendazol. But this is about Membendazol. Now, of course, this is not medical advice in any way, shape or form. Never stop or start any treatment based on what we say in these videos. This is entirely for educational interest purposes only. So Membendazol, it's an inexpensive, widely used accessible antiparasitic drug used in veterinary medicine, dog dewormer if you like, and it's readily available. And the patent on Membendazol expired in the early 1990s. Now, I think you know what this means. It means that anyone can make it, therefore it's hard for any manufacturer to make a lot of money out of it. So it's now a generic drug, so people can make it, Indian pharmaceutical companies can make it by the ton if they want to, and of good quality as well. So let's look at case 1 in detail, and then I'll just mention the other couple of cases, more not quite in passing, but with a little less detail, otherwise we'll be here forever. And if things go well, I'm going to give a fascinating story from the history of medicine as well, but you have to hang on for that. So case 1, 83-year-old woman, October 2021. Stage 4 breast cancer, and I've listed all this here. I'll put this all in the notes so you can follow the story for yourself in the description. So stage 4 breast cancer, in other words, it spread around the body, metastatic disease. She'd initially been diagnosed with breast cancer in 2009, but she'd been treated. She'd had a bilateral mastectomy in 2009 and other treatments, and she did well for a while, but then the disease recurred in 2021. A liver biopsy confirmed metastatic breast malignancy. In other words, it had spread to a liver. Now, we say if it spread to your liver or your bones, basically that's basically a death sentence, normally. So this had spread to a liver, confirmed metastases, acidic fluid. So ascites is the swelling in the abdomen you get as a result of cancer and other things. But that confirmed metastatic breast cancer when you take the fluid from the abdomen through a tap in the wall of the abdomen, you send it for cytology and they could see malignant cells. Now, magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, of the spine, October 21, metastatic breast cancer in T12, that's thoracic 12, thoracic 10 vertebrae, lumbar 1, lumbar 2, lumbar 3, number 4, number 5, sacral 1, sacral 2, and the iliac bones. In other words, this had spread to a liver and her bones. Clearly an intractable terminal diagnosis by all criteria. It was all over the place, basically. A PET scan. Now, a PET scan indicates metabolic activity. You're given a radioactive isotope, and it detects metabolic activity. And of course, cancer is very metabolically active, so that would light up. So a PET scan on the 29th of December 2021 showed 6 hypermetabolic lung lesions, and the largest was 2.8 by 1.5 centimetres. In other words, it was in her lungs. So it was in her spine, in her lungs, in her liver. This was everywhere. Hypermetabolic bone lesions, the biggest was 5 by 2.9 centimetres. And a lytic lesion, that just means basically you see a hole in L4 extended to the spinal canal area. Patient declined further conventional chemotherapy or radiation therapy and was placed under hospice care. So basically end-of-life care. Now, you might need to look at the notes to follow this accurately, but I've got it all here. November 22nd, 2021, she started self-administering Membendazol at a daily dose of 222 milligrams. So she just basically started giving herself Fenben. In December 2021, she received another injection to block estrogen, intended to inhibit cancer growth. So you got a bit of a complication there. You got two treatments going on at once, but to give an estrogen blocker at this stage would not, under normal circumstances, be curative. Anyway, moving on to 2022 in January, she did have targeted radiation for 2 spinal metastases. The spinal metastases are horrible. They can press on the spinal cord and on the main nerves. The pain can be indescribably bad. Nerve pain is you really don't want nerve pain. So she had radiotherapy for that, but that would only affect where the radiation targeted. It wouldn't affect the liver, it wouldn't affect the lungs, it wouldn't affect the other vertebrae. These tumours disappeared rapidly, relieving the pain within a few days. So very effective palliative treatment, but not curative because it wouldn't affect the cancer in other parts of the body. Continued taking 222 milligrams of fenbendazole a day for 8 months. During this time, her liver enzymes normalised. So the cancer was in her liver. That would alter her liver enzymes, but they went back down to liver enzymes went back to normal. Now, something called CA2729 is a tumour marker. That dropped from 316 in November 2021, and then in July 2022, so 7 months later, it was down to 36.6, indicating there was massively less tumour in her body. Then April 2022, a PET scan, again looking at the metabolic activity, confirmed the absence of any abnormal metabolic activity indicative of cancer. Quite staggering. So it wasn't her lungs, it wasn't her vertebrae, it wasn't her pelvis, it was in her liver, and yet after 8 months of fenbendazole, the PET scan confirmed the absence of any abnormal metabolic activity indicative of cancer. It's not saying that's the cause, of course. We'll come on to that in a minute. Now, patient was confirmed to have no evidence of active disease. This is in June 2022. All treatments were discontinued and she was considered to be in complete remission. Nothing I've ever seen. And I'm sure even oncologists watching will very, very rarely have seen such a dramatic turnaround. Follow-up monitoring was scheduled for every 3 to 6 months. Throughout her fenbendazole treatment, she continued a regular supplementation of vitamin D 5,000 international units and a multivitamin, and I would imagine that vitamin D was important because it's an immunomodulator. It's necessary for normal immune function. Subsequent PET scans looking at metabolic activity showed no abnormal metabolic activity. The fenbendazole treatment period revealed no adverse effects at this dosage, so no adverse effects from the fenbendazole. The patient the patient remains recurrence-free and continues to take fenbendazole nearly 3 years after being declared in remission. I am delighted for this lady. It saved her a very painful death so far, and God willing she'll continue to do well. Now, so that was that paper there. Do check it out for yourself. I might show you a bit more from it in a minute. Now, the other thing that I found when I was looking here is what's called the Joe Tippins protocol. And again, this is not me giving advice. I'm merely pointing out that this exists. Here it is here. Fenbendazole.org. Fenbendazole, 222 milligrams, according to this protocol. Now, this protocol is saying take 1 capsule 3 days a week. I know you won't be able to see that, but I'll put the link. Look at it for yourself. And then take no mebendazole for 4 days. Is this Joe Tippins protocol? It's also advising some other things, CBD oil and curcumin. Again, this is not me prescribing. I'm simply saying what this says. And fenbendazole should be taken with food, preferably fatty food, I would have thought. So that's the famous Joe Tippins protocol there, or the original protocol from the Joe Tippins site. Again, not me giving advice. Can't stress that enough. This is not me giving advice. Now, the timelines for the 3 cases are all given here. That was the first case, that's the second case, and that's the third case. And again, these are published in the paper. You can look at them at leisure if you've got a particular interest in this. So, quite amazing. Multi-metastatic stage 4 breast cancer, 3 years, complete remission, apparently gone. Membendazole, no side effects, having been basically assigned to hospice care. Quite an amazing story. Quite an amazing story. Just one case, of course. Case 2, I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but case 2, 75-year-old man with prostate cancer, bone scans and CT scans revealed metastasis in the spine, pelvic bones and right humeral head. This is one of the terrible things about prostate cancer. It goes to the bones, causes indescribably painful pathological fractures. He was given conventional treatments and he was given complementary treatments, so we've got quite a few variables here. But the use of fenbendazole coincided with continued regression of metastatic lesions and sustained undetectable PSA levels, which is quite amazing. Prostate-specific antigen, of course, indicating lack of prostatic tumour. After 26 months of sustained regression and no new progression, the patient remains in near complete response and continues fenbendazole with conventional therapy. And the Joseph Tippins protocol there suggests 3 days with fenbendazole and 4 days without. And this is actually very important. There's a lot. You get a lot of benefits sometimes from taking drugs for a period of time and then stopping. So that was case 2. And again, look at the whole details are there. It's the paper is intelligible. It's written in a bit of medicalese sometimes, but it's readable. Case 3, a 63-year-old man, hip growth, so tumour on his hip, melanoma, presumably metastasised from malignant melanoma in the skin. Again, PET scanning showed multiple hypermetabolic foci, in other words, hypermetabolic areas all over the place. Peritoneal and retroperitoneal nodules, so that's in the abdominal cavity, and behind the abdominal cavity, the kidneys, for example, are retroperitoneal. The bit behind the abdominal cavity, but in front of your spine. Focal uptakes in the stomach and small bowel, lesions in the right gluteus medius, various muscles, and L5 vertebrae. So the cancer here had spread to his stomach, small bowel, bones, and muscles. He was given conventional and complementary treatment, but of course they're not normally as curative or as helpful. The patient remains melanoma recurrence free over 11 months over 11 months after being declared to be in remission. So declared to be in remission 11 months later. And of course, I would assume the authors are going to follow these patients sort of longer term. 11 months later, still in remission. All these patients have reported no side effects. Conclusion from the authors: fenbendazole demonstrates potential as a novel, promising therapeutic option for repurposing in oncology. Its ability to contribute to tumour regression and achieve disease remission warrants further clinical research to establish its efficacy and optimise its use. Now, I know people are bouncing up and down now saying, but this is just 3 cases, John. Why isn't there a lot?
Yeah, I think I sent you the ivermectin paper with ivermectin fenbendazole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have a 76-year-old veteran who was diagnosed with a Gleason 7. You know, Gleason is the grade of cancer of the prostate, and it was a Gleason 7. He went on 12 milligrams of ivermectin every day for 8 weeks. And at 12 weeks, he got a PET scan done, a special PET scan done, looking at abnormalities in the prostate. They couldn't find anything.
That's amazing.
And his PSA, prostatic specific antigen, when his initial one with the cancer was 12.6, he's now at 5.3.
Well, there you go. Now, the second clip is again from Mr. Joe Rogan with in conversation with a Mr. Mel Gibson. Let's listen to what happened to 3 of Mr. Gibson's friends.
I'll tell you a good story.
Okay.
I have 3 friends. All 3 of them had stage 4 cancer. All 3 of them don't have cancer right now at all. And they had some serious stuff going on.
And what did they take?
Jesus. They took some, what you've heard they've taken.
Ivermectin,
Fenbendazole.
Fenbendazole, yeah.
That's
I'm hearing that a lot.
They drank hydrochloride something or other.
There's studies on that
There's-
now where people have proven that
People
they've
drinking methylene
yeah.
blue and stuff like that.
Yeah, methylene blue, which was a fabric dye.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a textile dye. And now they find out it has profound effects on your mitochondria.
Yep.
Yeah.
This stuff works, man.
There's a lot of stuff that does work, which is very strange because, again, it's profit. When you hear about things that are demonized and that turn out to be effective, you always wonder, well, what is going on here? How is our medical institutions, how have they failed us so that things that do cure you are not promoted because they're not profitable?
Well, it's clearly true to say there's a lot of interest and increasing interest on repurposed drugs. Drugs which are often out of patent, remarkably inexpensive, with potential wider therapeutic applications than their original indications. Now, the problem is there's a real lack of trial data on this, and we know this is true because clinical trials are expensive and people aren't going to spend a lot of money on trials. But I believe that President Trump is going to reintroduce right to try. So people with diseases like cancer or terminal diseases will have a right to try a new drug or a repurposed drug. And this means that they should be available on prescription fairly soon in the United States. And this means we can collect very detailed, ongoing, longitudinal, prospective data to allow us to adjudicate definitively on efficacy, even without potentially a randomized double-blind controlled trial. Now, I do know Well, welcome to this talk. Now, I wanted to give a bit of feedback on a few videos we've done recently. We've looked at a video on ivermectin, and some people are suggesting it might be good for treating some cancers. And we also looked at another drug, Membendazol, and some people say it might be useful for treating some cancers. No large-scale clinical trials have been done on it, so we are largely at the level of anecdotal evidence, although we have suggested some pretty interesting, some might say impressive, pathophysiological pharmacodynamic mechanisms by which this effect could be occurring. And we've also talked about the right to try. Desperate people that are dying have the right to try whatever treatment they would like or whatever experience they want. And the analogy we used in the past, if they want to try some malt whiskey, then they can try some malt whiskey. You know, if someone's dying, they should be allowed to try what they want. But what I want to do in this is give you some feedback from your feedback. Now, of course, I'm not prescribing any drugs. I'm not recommending any treatment. This is purely an academic discussion, and you'll have your own ideas on it. And the feedback I'm going to give you from you is not evidence. It's not science. It's not saying that it works. But if it's ignored by mainstream researchers, in my view, they are negligent. If this, what I'm about to talk about now, is ignored by mainstream researchers, in my view, they are negligent. So let me give you some of your anecdotal reports. Now, of course, these could be made up. We don't know how real they are, but they're all there under the comments of the video, so they're in public domain. So Jay says this, talking about ivermectin. I'm a stage 4 metastatic prostate cancer survivor, 5.5 years now. Now that's pretty good. So someone who's got stage 4, that means it's all over the body, it's spread. But they've had that for 5.5 years. Membendazole, ivermectin, atorvastatin, metformin. PSA, that's prostate-specific antigen, went from 1,900, which is massive. That means you've got prostate cancer basically all over the body. Went from 1,900 to undetectable for the past 4 years. So it's gone from 1,900 to undetectable. Oncologists couldn't care less, I'm still alive. How can we get the word out faster? Disappointing from Jay's oncologist. Buzzy says this. My friend's dad had terminal bladder cancer and had months to live. He started taking ivermectin and now he's cancer-free within 6 months. Now, of course, Busy may not exist. I'm sure Busy does exist if you're watching. Does this constitute scientific evidence? Of course not. Is this material which should go on to proper clinical trials? Of course it is. Am I recommending any particular treatments? Absolutely, emphatically not. But it is quite interesting, isn't it? Because remember, this is a video for academic stimulation only. Dag says, we have the right to eat sugar, drink alcohol, smoke tobacco, etc. But oh no, don't take a drug we can't make money into. Interesting point of view. Trash Can says, I believe right to try should not apply only to terminal patients, but it's a start. So what Trash is saying there is, yes, terminal patients should have the right to try these treatments, but heck, anyone should be able to try what they want within reason, is the view expressed by Trash Can. Of course, I'm not expressing any opinion at all. I'm merely reporting what is in the comments. Little Red says this, and I get many tragic things like this. My wife just died of cancer, so our commiserations. We're very sorry. My wife just died of cancer. The doctors refused to give her ivermectin. To me, that's a clear right to try situation. Why didn't Little Red's wife have the right to try if she wanted to? Because tragically, she died anyway. What's wrong with the right to try? Rock says, whatever happened to your body? Not to be sarcastic, but I really mean that. And certain people are saying, my body, my choice. Not apparently when it comes to drugs that people can't make money out of. Then it's your body, someone else's choice. I find that outrageous. You can have your own view on it. Tech says, I first became aware of ivermectin in 1977 when I was working at a local feed mill. Farmers would mix in ivermectin, which came in 50-pound bags. 50-pound bags, that's like 20 kilos of ivermectin, in their cattle feed to keep the cows from getting worms. Since then, it has become a miracle. So this shows that ivermectin, we can get 50-pound bags that are cheap enough just to put a scoop into cattle feed. This can be made for essentially no cost. Essentially free. It would cost more to put it in bubble wrap strips than it would to manufacture the actual preparation itself. Now, Suzy says this about streptomycin, which is a drug for treating tuberculosis. My dad had TBs and the doctors were arguing because it hadn't been trialled. So at this stage, there'd been no clinical trials, but Suzy's dad had tuberculosis. He said, I'm dead anyway, so I might as well try it. And he signed to give permission to have the streptomycin. He was the first test case for streptomycin, and he survived for another 60 years. So here we have, and presumably this is the reason that Suzy is with us now. Suzy's dad was taking an experimental drug called streptomycin, and it cured his tuberculosis, saved his life, and thankfully Suzy is with us now. Not saying all experimental drugs are as good as streptomycin, of course not, but it's an interesting anecdote. Joe says this, exactly why the heck should anyone lord it over desperate people? Couldn't agree more, Jose. Why should anyone lord it over desperate people? And these people are very often desperate. They should have the right to try, in my view, as was the previous, in his first incarnation, President Trump advocated. Trust says, of course you are correct. Can you imagine the mindset of someone who does not agree with this? Pure tyranny. Are we under tyrannical control because of what we are not allowed to try? Interesting point of view from Trust. Ilian said, government should not interfere with being born or dying. These experiences are right out of the hand of God. Now, moving on to the video we did on Fenbendazole. Fenbendazole. Fenbendazole gave a friend 5 more years. She'd been directed to hospice. 30 days later, 100% cancer-free with Fenbendazole. Now, what can we take from that? That's from Judy. Judy may or may not exist. This could be someone who's just making this up. Of course, it's just a comment on a YouTube video. But I don't believe that's the case. I believe Judy definitely believes what she's saying. And if there's any truth at all in what she's saying, this has to be investigated. And if professional investigators are not investigating this, I suggest that they are being negligent. Petrila says, I have high-grade DCIS, that stands for ductal carcinoma in situ, in the breast. In other words, breast cancer. I've been using fenbendazole and ivermectin for 6 months and have shrunk my tumour by over 1 centimetre. So we have two preparations here. Now, which one was doing the shrinking, of course, we don't know. It's always confusing when you've got two variables. But again, you would think that people that are charged with researching cancer in national bodies would think, good grief, we better look at that one, hadn't we? Lackery, and I'm not using the full names here but they are all in the comments. Lackery says, my husband is taking Membendazol. He has glioblastoma, brain tumour. Stage 4 brain tumour. He was having terrible seizures until he started taking Membendazol. He hasn't had one in 16 months. Quite incredible, if true. And I'm sure it is, quite incredible. Also now at 3 years with his terminal condition, he's outlived his 12-month prognosis massively. So he was taking lots of fits, they stopped. He was given 12 months to live, still alive, thankfully. We're delighted to learn, still alive at 3 years after. He remains well. The tumour simply isn't growing. And in the previous videos, we did look at pharmacodynamic reasons why this might be the case. For example, we looked at the fact that the spindles that pull the chromosomes apart when the cells divide, they don't polymerize. Those spindles don't form. And so the spindles don't form that pull the chromosomes into separate cells. So you can't get two separate cells from one cell. Therefore, you're not getting mitosis. You're not getting cell division. Therefore, obviously, the tumour can't carry on growing because it depends on ongoing cell division. There is a pharmacodynamic, pathophysiological, biochemical rationale to this that should be, in my view, investigated. Ilfeli. Membendazol cured my dog's terminal squamous cell carcinoma. Now, quite a few people have had the pets cured, or believe they've had the pets cured. So Membendazol cured my dog's terminal squamous cell carcinoma. Fantastic stuff. My dog had 2 months to live, presumably from a veterinary opinion. I gave her Membendazol, and 2.5 years later, she's fine. So, terminally ill dog, fine. 2.5 years later, delighted. Kenny says, my mum was given 6 months to live in March with pancreatic cancer. Refused all treatments and took 222 milligrams of Membendazol 6 days a week. 8 months later is still healthy and tumour has not increased in size. Doctors not interested to know how this happened because she didn't want their treatments. So again, interesting anecdote, perhaps something that should be researched. Terry says, thank you. I had bladder cancer. I had surgery to remove the tumour. Did 6 BCG treatments, never had chemo or radiation. And I started taking Membendazol. When I went back for my 18-month checkup, they thought it had come back. They found something in my bladder. They did biopsies. The biopsies came back negative. The surgeon saw them and asked them for them to be retested because he was convinced that what he saw were bladder cancer cells. Biopsies came back negative. And the biopsies, of course, are the definitive pathological diagnosis. I know that Fenben has kept me cancer-free now for 2.5 years. Thank you for sharing this information. And also, I had a friend who was diagnosed with stage 4 throat cancer, had chemo, had radiation, and started taking Membendazol, which means Membendazol. His last checkup, he was told things are in remission, and he's singing again. Wonderful. There is an easy way to handle this. Dave said, my beloved dog was diagnosed 2 years ago with terminal cancer that had spread widely. She was given at best 6 months. Yet she is still with me and happy and healthy. I put her on Fenben right after the diagnosis, and I give full credit to Fenben for her still being here and enjoying a good quality of life. No real side effects I've noticed, perhaps some watery stools occasionally. So again, Dave's dog here given 6 months to live. 2 years later, dog is still alive and healthy. And now dogs, of course, are massively important. But if a treatment's working for a dog, is there a good chance it's working for humans? Well, we are really quite similar in a lot of ways. And a lot of veterinary drugs are human drugs anyway. So these are interesting stories, firstly because they're saving our beloved dogs, and also because the applicability to humans is significant and merits detailed further investigation. Exhibit says, last year I was diagnosed with a small grade 1 uterine cancer. This was done via biopsy, so taking a bit and having a look at it under the microscope. They gave me quite a bit of time between the diagnosis and my surgery for hysterectomy, removal of the uterus. They didn't seem to have a big sense of urgency, so I decided to see what I could do on my own to help this. So I started some natural therapies and also added Pancure, which is Fenbendazole. About 2.5 months later, I had my surgery. They tested me a while on the table and also tested lymph nodes to make sure all is clear. My pathology report was all clear, no cancer at all. My pathology report was all clear, no cancer at all. I was the luckiest girl in the cancer centre that day. They surmised that the biopsy removed the cancer. That could be true, but what are the chances? It could be the initial biopsy was wrong, or that the fenbendazole worked, but who knows? Thank you for spreading the word. Now, normally when you're resecting a tumour, you resect the tumour and you do what you call a wide border excision. So if you've got a little tumour there, you take a much bigger bit from round about it to make sure you've got all the little bits. Because if there's a little straggle, a finger of tumour that you've missed, it can grow back. So the idea that it could be treated with a biopsy, to me is inconceivable, because when you take a biopsy, you're only taking part of the tumour. You're not taking the whole thing, and you're certainly not doing a wide border excision. So very impossible in my view to think that the biopsy could have cured the cancer. Janelle says, my cat had lymphoma, and my vet said almost 5 years ago now that she should be put down because he only had weeks to live. So cat with lymphoma, aggressive form of blood cancer, that he should be put down because he only had weeks to live. Took him home and researched and found out about fenbendazole, and he's doing good. I continue supplementing with fenbendazole. So cat with lymphoma, vet said put him down, he put him down straight away. 5 years later, still living a good life and giving pleasure to June, which of course is brilliant. Thank you for this is KRS saying to me, thank you for highlighting Fenben. 3 years ago I cured my 13-year-old dog, stage 4 liver cancer. Cancer grew to the size of a small lemon, and the dog was only given up to a month to live. I used high doses of Pancure, 5 milligrams in liquid form. Cancer was gone within 4 months. Now, the idea that something can take away a liver tumour, a liver secondary, almost certainly from the bowel, to me is amazing. When we have patients in with colorectal cancer, and that commonly metastasizes to the liver. And when you do the scan and you see that the tumour's in the patient's liver, especially if there's multiple metastatic deposits in the liver, basically that is a terminal diagnosis, nearly always a terminal diagnosis. So here we have a dog cured of liver, what we assume are liver metastases. This is very, very impressive findings. This works well, and I will only use Pancure, that's fenbendazole, should I ever need it. Well, that's your opinion, KRS. Of course, we couldn't possibly comment. In May 2025, it's my dog's 17th birthday coming up. Absolutely brilliant. Fantastic. I'm delighted for you and your dog. None of you are giving the dogs names, unfortunately, but there you go. It's what we've got. Maggie says, I used it to clear my cancer. Bob says, I was diagnosed with small cell carcinoma of the left lung. That's one of the bronchogenic carcinomas. In November 2022, I was told I was terminal stage 4 as it already spread to my lymph nodes and pleura. That's the membranes around about the lung. I've been taking fenbendazole and ivermectin for a month now daily. Bloods from hospital yesterday were all clear, so no ill effects from them, which is brilliant. Richard says, I cured my lymphoma with fenbendazole, 222 milligrams for a week, then a week off for 2 months. So it sounds like Richard was taking 222 milligrams of fenbendazole a day for a week, and then a week off, then back on for a week. He did that for 2 months, gained all my weight back, feel great, haven't been back to the doc in 2 years. Now, these are anecdotal reports. Scientifically, they comprise essentially no evidence at all, but they are really what I would classify as qualitative research. They are people's qualitative experiences. And the thing about qualitative research is it can be used, and in this case, in my view, should be used as a basis for proper quantitative clinical trial-based evaluations. And in fact, with this, we wouldn't even need a pharmaceutical company to put up the $50 million for a randomised double-blind controlled trial, because we could actually collect retrospective data. If people had the right to try, they could try these drugs, and we could look at them over a long period of time. We could build up national cohorts of tens of thousands of patients in no time at all, because we're losing people all the time. We're losing dogs all the time from cancers. This data could be collected on humans and animals. And then we can hand it over to our statisticians, and the statisticians can tell us mathematical truth based on these potential prospective observations. This could be done. In my view, it should be done. Unfortunately, it is not being done. Let me know why you think, why not, but for now, as always, thank you for watching. Absolutely there already. Now let's just look at what this study is about. It's a compilation of 80 case controlled reports, 80 case reports across various cancer types. Breast, lung, colorectal, pancreatic cancers are included. While these anecdotal accounts suggest potential anti-cancer effects of fenbendazole, the lack of controlled clinical trials necessitates caution. So, I can't emphasise enough, don't take any drugs based on what you hear here. Only take drugs that are given to you by your registered medical prescriber. This is for academic interest, but I am also hoping it's going to stimulate new research, which is also massively important. So controlled clinical trials, not going to happen, I wouldn't have thought, because you can't make money out of repurposed drugs unless the government takes it on. Healthcare professionals should be consulted before considering fenbendazole as a treatment option. Now, fenbendazole, in the UK at least, and I think it's true in the States, is not actually licensed for human use. There's a similar drug called membendazole, but this doesn't alter the fact that people are taking it. Now, I make no comment on that. I simply report that people are taking it. There's been growing popularity in recent years of the use of fenben as a single agent or supplementary therapeutic. And we know that drugs like fenbendazole, membendazole and ivermectin are well tolerated by the vast majority of individuals, a very low side effect profile. All drugs have adverse events, of course, but these less than other drugs that could be mentioned. Now, the method that they use here, reports were categorised by cancer type and outcomes were assessed based on self-reported measures. Now, obviously, this is a limitation. We've got similar data that I'll show you in a minute from this channel as well. Tumour regression, remission status and overall survival, which of course is wonderful to promote survival if that is the case. These findings, while compelling according to this article, must be interpreted cautiously due to the inherent limitations of the data source. And again, the frustrations are there. But this qualitative, I think this is I would call this qualitative data essentially, but that shows where the quantitative data should be done, where it should be collected. And we're not short of statisticians, as we've said many times, who can analyse this material once we get the data. Now, breast cancer. There was 8 cases of breast cancer reported outcomes such as tumour shrinkage or remission. Wonderful news. The majority of these cases involved early to moderate stage disease, with some patients combining fenbendazole with standard treatments. Interesting that the fenbendazole could be combined with standard treatments like chemotherapy and hormone therapy or hormone suppression therapy indeed. One notable case involved a patient with metastatic, so it spread all over the place, or spread to other sites at least, triple negative breast cancer achieving remission after 6 months on fenbendazole. Triple negative means that there's not various antigens on the surface. It can be associated with the BRCA gene, which greatly predisposes to breast and ovarian cancer, and it's often a cancer in younger people. I think it's about 15% of cancers from memory, but often those under 40. So if we can cure this, that would be wonderful, because we're talking about young women and a few young men, in fact, indeed. Now, a bit confusing, alongside a ketogenic diet and immune supportive treatment. So this is why we need trials. So we've got people here that are taking fenbendazole and traditional treatments and immunosupportive treatments and sometimes a ketogenic diet. So how do we tease out between the two? Well, of course, in a clinical trial, you would say, well, you lot take fenben alone, you lot take fenben and conventional therapy, you lot take fenben and ketogenic diet, you lot take ketogenic diet on its own, you would isolate them. But if we can't do a clinical trial, and the efficacy of that would be very questionable, actually, what we need to do is people, if who knows, 500,000 people in the United States decide to try this option when they're given the right to try, then we'll have some people who do take fenbendazole without a ketogenic diet. We'll have some people who take fenbendazole with a ketogenic diet. We'll have some people who take fenbendazole with another drug like ivermectin. We'll have some people who take fenbendazole with traditional treatments or without traditional treatments. So in other words, you'll have self-generating cohorts here that can be isolated as long as that data is prospectively collected. And this wouldn't be difficult to do. This can be done. So these can be teased apart, hopefully, in the next few years, if people choose these options under right to try rules, which I believe are going to be coming back in the United States. Because people that have got a terminal disease anyway, that are dying anyway, to me, it is unconscionable not to allow them to try what treatment they would like to try. Anyway, so that is all teasable, outable potentially in the future. Now, in this study of 80 respondents, lung cancer, 9 cases highlighted improved survival rates and tumour regression. Lung cancer, of course, has got an appalling prognosis. Appalling prognosis. I remember when I was a young theatre staff nurse, I'd just started in theatre, and the consultant came across from Newcastle to where I work. And we did these, in those days, it was rigid bronchoscopy, and you look down and say, oh, they've got lung cancer. And I expected him to say, well, we can do this, that and the other. And he said, well, the prognosis is essentially non-existent. And I was taken aback by what couldn't be done. And what an appalling prognosis. Now, of course, things have moved on since then. But still, lung cancer has a difficult prognosis, shall we say, without going into too much detail. Now, one patient with advanced, I think this is non-small cell lung carcinoma, a lot of anachronisms in this, demonstrated significant tumour shrinkage within 3 months of incorporating fenbendazole alongside a more traditional treatment, checkpoint inhibitors. Colorectal cancer, 9 patients reported tumour reduction, remission or disease stabilisation. Wonderful news. And again, particularly striking outcomes. One of the most striking outcomes was a patient with stage 4 colorectal cancer achieving no evidence of disease status after integrating fenben with conventional therapies and dietary modifications. And again, was it this synergistic effect? Again, if we have larger scale numbers with people opting for different treatment options, people are essentially selecting what group they're going to go into. I know there's questions there with randomization, but if the numbers are big enough, I'm sure we can take that into account. Then we can unpick what it is about these particular individuals that gives such a good outcome. You get the feeling there's a real treasure trove of data here just waiting to be tapped. Pancreatic cancer, again, appalling outcomes normally. 8 cases involved pancreatic cancer and aggressive malignancy with limited treatment options. Outcome was generally less pronounced than other cancers, unfortunately. Other types of cancer reporting benefit, melanoma, prostate cancer, glioblastoma in the head, in the brain, ovarian cancer, mixed outcomes. Some patients indicate significant clinical improvement, including reduced tumour markers and alleviated symptoms. Now, the combined therapies, as we've said, making the specific effects of a particular arm of the intervention difficult to adjudicate, but this could be done with larger numbers if data is collected, as is the same with supportive therapy. I mean, many patients used, Professor Dalglish told us how essential vitamin D status is to a wide range of cancer treatments. Vitamin C, of course, goes all the way back to Linus Pauling. Zinc, curcumin are the synergistic effects. And there could well be synergistic effects. Or, with some treatments, are there inhibitory effects? So taking a particular supplement, could that potentially inhibit the action of fenbendazole? We don't know. This is why we need to collect the data, and may well be collecting the data in the next few years. Consistency and dosage. Regular and sustained use of fenbendazole appeared to correlate with better reported outcomes. Dosage ranged from 2 to 2 milligrams, a standard veterinary dose, to 1 gram per day, depending on individual protocols. But of course, this is just for academic interest. Don't take anything based on what we say here. Limitations of this study: small sample size, self-reported data, concurrent therapies, as we've mentioned. Now, potential mechanisms of action here. Is this ludicrous? Well, no, there are real potential mechanisms of action with ivermectin and fenbendazole and mebendazole in cancer. There are potential mechanisms of action, pharmacodynamic effects. Microtubule disruption. So what's happening here is when a cell divides, if you have a cell there that's going to divide, the nuclear material the nucleus in the middle will divide. It will divide into two, and you'll get one going to this side and one going to this side with the individual chromosomes. But the chromosomes are all sort of towed, as it were, by these microtubules that tow them into their half of the cell to cause the division. So if these microtubules aren't forming in a cancer cell, the cancer cell can't divide. So microtubule disruption makes perfect sense. Metabolic effects, inhibiting glucose. Like all cells, cancer cells need energy. Glucose is the common energy source of cells. So you inhibit the ability of the cell to use glucose. It's a bit like starving it, isn't it? Which is good. Immune modulation, more speculative, but potentially. Consistency of positive outcomes across diverse cancer types suggests a potential biological effects that merits further investigation. We agree. The pattern of case reports also suggests that fenbendazole may inhibit broad-spectrum anti-cancer properties. What an intriguing possibility. It is imperative that patients consult healthcare professionals before considering fenbendazole as a treatment option. I'm saying that as a direct quote from the text. And future directions: controlled clinical trials, probably only if the government takes it on, which is, of course, is terrible. We need a complete rethink of the selectivity of medical topics which are researched and the selectivity of medical topics which are ignored. Mechanism studies, always good to know what the heck is going on. Combination therapy research, as we've said. The consistency of anecdotal outcomes supported by plausible preclinical mechanisms positions fenbendazole as a promising candidate for future investigation in oncology. Of course, we would need fenbendazole to be officially approved for human use as well, so the drug regulatory agencies can look at that. Mebendazole is very similar. It ends in azole, and we know that ivermectin can have similar anecdotal reports about it. And in fact, just to show you on a previous video, I just compiled a few of your reports that we have here. These are all, I'm going to paste these below and put the link to the video. But these are all reports from you that you have given me on feedback from previous videos. Again, someone should do a proper qualitative evaluation of this. But lots of positive reports about human lives potentially saved, animal lives potentially saved. And that was just a few that I picked out for a feedback video, which I say I will put the link to. So I'll put as many of those in the comments as I can. Leave me comments about your own experience. We are accumulating anecdotal evidence. Let's hope that this is soon transposed into firm quantitative data, and that regulatory agencies around the world stay bang up to date with the latest data to save lives from people dying of cancer. But it's not only saving the life. Cancer can be a painful death as well. The amount of human pain, suffering and death, if this is demonstrated to be efficacious, that this can prevent, is immense. My 11-year-old cat was diagnosed with cancer all through his body, which had started in his mouth. He also had visible tumours on his abdomen. He was diagnosed by 2 different vets, both of whom wanted to put him out of his misery. Right. Immediately. One of the vets said I could try chemo, but it would cost around $15,000 with a very low success rate. I put him on fenbendazole paste, 300 micrograms once per day. I assume that's 300 micrograms per kilogram. The viewer doesn't say. The reason I'm not saying who these viewers are, they've put these in the public domain, so we're okay reading them out. Thank you for putting them in the public domain, everyone that's contributed. But I just don't feel it's right without explicit permission to put people's names in just for confidentiality and decency purposes. But you can check, they are all in the feedback. I put him on fenbendazole paste, 300 micrograms once a day, 3 days on, 4 days off. So giving the fenbendazole for 3 days, then a 4-day rest. By the end of the first week, he was eating again, had stopped drooling and was walking around like his old self. After just 3 weeks, the vet declared him cancer-free. And what are we to make of this? What are we to make of this? Cancer-free after 3 weeks, after being diagnosed and advising euthanasia. What are we to make of this? After just 3 weeks, the vet declared him cancer-free. That was a year ago. This is incredible. If there's any validity to this, it's immoral not to research it. My cat is now fat and happy and in excellent health. I paid about 21 Australian dollars, 12 English pounds, for each syringe of edible paste to put on his food. Each syringe contained enough fenbendazole for 3 days of active treatment. Then he had 4-day break before starting again the next week. So what are we talking about here? $120 or something altogether. Biggest cost was having it shipped to Australia. Well, I'm pleased you could get it to Australia. I bought it direct from a vet supply company. Remember, I'm not telling you what to take for yourselves or indeed for your animals. I'm not a vet. And I'm certainly not your doctor. In fact, I'm a nurse lecturer. Biggest cost was having it shipped to Australia. I bought it direct from a vet supplying company. They had also, well, I'm a retired nurse lecturer. they had also tasteless fenbendazole granules, which could be sprinkled on food. Interesting. So they also had tasteless fenbendazole granules, which could be sprinkled on food. I imagine this would be a better option for humans. Oh, heck, I'm just reading that out. I'm not telling you what to do. Please don't do anything based, because fenbendazole is not authorised for humans, remember. This is a veterinary comment. I'm grateful and amazed every day that my dear cat has fully recovered. He only took fenbendazole for a total of 4 weeks, nothing else. The vet couldn't believe it. It's a miracle as far as I'm concerned. And I must say, I agree, it appears to be. Given all these anecdotes that we've looked at, I consider it unethical for this not to be researched. Ivermectin, Membendazole, fenbendazole, of course, mostly. My co-worker was stage 4 prostate cancer a few months ago and had resigned and was put on hospice, terminal care. He got the fenben, and long story short, he's back at work today. Now, this could be someone making it up. I don't think it's AI. This could be a lie. It could be an exaggeration. Of course, we don't know. But when you put all these together, they're pointing in a direction that needs to be tested. Another one. I just heard from a relative who had stage 4 cancer. That's metastatic cancer all over the place. And the doctor told him to get his affairs in order and gave him an estimate of 3 months. He went on ivermectin and fenbendazole protocol and is now in complete remission. I've never known anyone personally who's had such a benefit from a non-traditional cancer treatment until now. Interesting anecdote, isn't it? And it's putting together, this needs tested. Another one. And they're all there. You can check these for yourself if you want to. I'm a pharmacist and I have a patient who had stage 4 lung cancer. Not a good prognosis at all. He was about to start his 3rd round of chemo with a poor prognosis when he heard about and started Membendazol. He didn't tell the physician treating him or me. Instead, I noticed one day he didn't come in with his oxygen, and he was smiling and told me what he'd been doing. He said it changed his life. He went from near bedridden to working in the yard, mowing grass and doing pretty much anything else he wanted to do. The physician has given him the all clear and is still scratching his head about it because he didn't expect the chemo to work like it did. He still doesn't know, and my patient is still taking it religiously. I have 2 dogs, another one. I have 2 dogs with stage 4 cancer. One has survived 3 years in great health, and she is very old to boot. The second dog was given weeks to live 3 months ago and is doing better than ever. No side effects from Fenben 222, presumably 222 milligrams, 222 milligrams every day. So delighted that the dogs are doing better. Now, of course, Membendazol is not approved for human use in the UK or in the United States, so never stop or start taking anything based on what you hear in this video. I'm just reading you out a few anecdotes. Another one. Have advanced prostate cancer since 2015, had surgery in 2015. Cancer has returned 3 times, been on hormone therapy for 5 years. This year it stopped working, PSA started going up, started taking Ivermectin and Membendazol. PSA is now 0. Incredible. Yeah, well, there you go, make what you want of that. It's one of the comments. Another comment. I personally know 2 women that live in my suburb. Both were diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, not sure what type. Were given at most 1 year to live, which is true with lung cancer. It's got a very poor prognosis, especially if it's metastasized already. One was 70 and the other mid-60s. They both chose not to do chemo and both ended up taking Fenben. And a few other diet changes. They are both cancer-free after 1 year. Could be made up, we don't know, do we? But they're all pointing in one direction. Actually, that's not quite true. There were some cases of people who'd taken Membendazol and Ivermectin and still died, and some animals as well, some pets, that they still died as well. But of course, this is what we need to find out. When is this indicated? When is it appropriate? What cancer? What stages? And if the trials show that it's useless, then so be it. Then we'll chalk it off and think of something else, or start thinking about something else. But we need trials on this, and the only place they seem to be getting started is Florida. More on that later. Another comment. I know 4 individuals who have had excellent cancer recovery from taking Fenben, including an aunt with an aggressive rare form. Totally jaw-dropping results, honestly. My dog is still alive and she's better than this time last year for sure. Membendazol saved my dog 100%. She is still old and senile and deaf, but in top form. We can all hope to be maybe a bit senile and old, but in top form. That sounds brilliant. Off for walks up the woods yesterday for 40 minutes. Can't be that bad if you're walking in the woods for 40 minutes. Want to thank John for the information about Membendazol. If I didn't hear, I have no doubt my dog would be dead months ago. You know, dogs can be just so important to people. I mean, people are important to people, but second to people, dogs probably come in second. Yes, praise the Lord for this repurposed drug. My husband was stage 2 colon cancer 3 months after his Whipple procedure, involved surgery. And liver metastases occurred, which is normally a death sentence. Found Joe Tippin's protocol and began taking Membendazol 7 days a week, 222 milligrams, 222 milligrams per day. Within 2 months, all spots on the liver were gone and remain cancer-free 3 years now. We have added Ivermectin 2. And we did post links to the Joe Tippin's website, Joe Tippin's protocols. Not that I'm advising them, just the links are there. I'll repost them. I combined Ivermectin with Fenben and killed small cell carcinoma. Small cell carcinoma, that's usually small cell carcinoma of the lung, a very aggressive form, very early metastasizer. My husband was inflicted with. It's completely gone. Incredible. Again, it's an anecdote. In July 19, diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer, given 6 months prognosis, hormone therapy, radiation therapy started immediately. Radiation therapy started immediately. Original PSA 1,900 plus. I used an NP, I suppose that's a nurse practitioner here in Idaho, or a natural practitioner, I'm not sure, an NP here in Idaho, who probably a natural practitioner here in Idaho, who monitors my health and prescribes Membendazol, Ivermectin, doxycycline, metformin, 15,000 international units of D3, zinc and magnesium. My PSA is still not detectable. Still on hormone therapy with oncologist. I've been taking D3 Membendazol for 6 years plus now. So given a prognosis of 6 months, thankfully still with us 6 years plus. Added Ivermectin a couple of years ago. Happy to report I'm still walking on this earth. PS, postscript, 64 when diagnosed, now 70 years of age. Wonderful. Another one. I'm stage 4 lung cancer with metastases in spine and pelvis. Not good. On chemotherapy from March, taking fenbendazole, turkey tail tincture, methylene blue tincture, pretty gloomy prognosis. Scanned in September, my tumour had decreased by 75%. Do not know what is working, but something is. The shame of it is I cannot tell my oncologist, as they have said, excuse me, as they have said they would stop my chemotherapy if I took alternative treatments. I'm not cured. It's really a pity this can't be integrated into the mainstream. In December 2023, my dog was diagnosed with malignant melanoma. I took him to an oncologist who said there was nothing they could do, and he had a 23% chance of survival at 2 years. At that point, I stopped taking him to the vet. I've treated him with Fenben, 1 round of dewormer per 3 weeks, 3 days with, 4 days without, fenbendazole presumably, for 1.5 years. Now I've reduced it to 2 rounds per month. He also gets dog CBD in his food. I presume that's cannabidiol. It will be 2 years next month, and he has no signs of illness. Fingers crossed that lasts. I got the idea from the Joe Tippins protocol. My mum is taking Fenben and Mben, which I assume is fenbendazole and Membendazole, and Ivermectin, and her breast cancer is 90% gone in a few months. Another one. It took my husband's fatal liver cancer from CA 1890, 1890, so that's a very high tumour marker, cancer marker, to 4, down to 4 in 3 months. This respondent says cured. I do hope so. My wife was diagnosed in 2021, stage 4 ovarian cancer, BRCA, that's the breast cancer positive. At the same time as starting chemo, she began a full metabolic protocol, including fenbendazole and mebendazole, which is, the person here's got Fenben and gentleman has got Fenben and Merben. I assume that's what he means. And other on and off-label drugs and vitamin D3, IVC, which I assume is intravenous vitamin C, and others. Cleared 200mm tumours in 6 weeks prior to surgery.
I didn't understand that.
My phone's interrupted. Cleared 200mm tumours in 6 weeks prior to surgery. Has been NDE, no evidence of disease, for 3 years. Continues with a maintenance dose, with a maintenance protocol, 4 days on, 3 days off. 3 months on, 3 off. Of course, I'm not advising any particular protocols. Well, I mean, this is just a few. And the last time we did this video, we had another batch of these as well. I don't know, I don't want to exaggerate. I probably had maybe 100 positive accounts. Self-selecting sample, perhaps. Is it evidence? No. Are the anecdotes genuine? I believe they are. Okay, there might be the odd person who's just psychopathic and thinks, I know what I'll do, I'm going to lie on this comment. But the pattern is that this is positive and should be thoroughly investigated. As a matter of urgency, we're losing people all the time. You know, if you haven't been affected by cancer with a friend or a relative, put your hand up. You know, no hands will go up. This needs proper trial data, or even if we don't do trials, this data could be quantitatively collected and analysed. And in the UK and most of the United States, it's simply not being done. Canada, Australia, New Zealand. While people are dying, twiddling their thumbs.